What up, Facebook family and friends? Another interview with me, yours truly, Elliot Andre from Connected Roots. I got some really cool news in my life. I became a registered psychotherapist today. I'm on Psychology today, and I'm feeling legit. Thumbs up if you also feel legit when you accomplish something in your life. Please, please do. Anyhow, I have an amazing interview today with a colleague and friend. This dude right here, Tommy Miller, is the shit when it comes to altered states of consciousness and sleep paralysis. So Tommy, if you could introduce yourself to our family and friends out there and give us your spiel.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tommy Miller. I'm practicing in Boulder, Colorado out here. I'm a clinical psychologist. Currently I run a psychotherapy practice where I primarily do individual therapy, and I'm working with clients who range with a wide variety of things they work on. You know, some people are dealing with depression, anxiety, life transition issues, things along those lines. But one of my rare areas of expertise is working with people who experience some pretty weird things, you know, sometimes very scary stuff as well.
Totally.
So what got me down this track is, as a psychologist, one of the things that actually made me want to be a psychologist is I'm fascinated with the study of consciousness itself. And then consciousness is one of the great mysteries left in life, and it's something that we do not fully understand.
Sure.
But one of the most intriguing aspects of consciousness is that we seem to have this kind of normal state of consciousness that we all typically operate on. And then there are occasional times where we can tap into these weird states of consciousness. Altered states is kind of what the expression is.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to understand the nature of these altered states of consciousness and what can occur during these altered states of consciousness, excuse me, but also trying to figure out how to use these altered states to help people with mental health struggles and help them understand themselves and understand kind of what the relationship is between these altered states and mental health and promoting mental health.
I mean, Tommy, that is so beautifully said, man. I've known you for a while now in the field, and I appreciate all the work you do, and I'm always curious if I could bring that into my own practice.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, as a registered psychotherapist, life coach, and certified life coach, but you know, a recreational therapist, excuse me, and life coach. I don't even know my own goddamn titles. I love it all. But anyways, so talk about this idea, if you could, man, like of an altered state. Like when I think altered state, I think like just watching movies, tripping out, whatever. So if you get to our viewers out there, kind of give them an idea of what an altered state would be in your mind, or altered consciousness would look like, or sound like to you.
So whenever I think of it, I try to think about shifting gears on a manual car. You know, you've got these different gears you can shift from, and our mind has these different gears as well. Now, the vast majority of our day-to-day life is spent in a gear that's primarily programmed to help us with problem-solving activities, goal-directed stuff like, you know, how do I go to work, complete my tasks, get my paycheck, come home, provide for the family, the whole 9 yards.
Totally.
There are, however, these different states of consciousness that we can slip into, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Some of them are very frequent. You've probably experienced them yourself. Others are, like I said, a little bit more on the weird side, and only every so.
I do. You got to define this idea of weird, because like I feel like our viewers out there are like weird.
Yeah, what's that mean exactly?
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but keep on going.
Let me give you some examples.
Okay, perfect, beautiful.
So the most common example of an altered state that I think most people can relate to is when you're driving down the road. Let's say you're driving home from work or something along those lines, and you find yourself at home without even realizing that you drove home. You're like, how did I just drive the last hour and a half, or mile and a half, without realizing that I made the left turn and the right turn and things along these lines? So we kind of slip into this trance where our bodies go on autopilot and work off procedural memory. Just like, you know, when we're riding a bike, we don't think too much about riding that bike. The same thing happens when we're in a car. We can kind of slip in, we're not thinking about it, but we're just going on autopilot. So this state of consciousness is referred to as a trance state. And trances happen all the time.
How many people out there, thumbs up, have experienced that? Literally, Tommy's talking about that right now, and I'm like, that was me yesterday. So, like, keep on going, man. Seriously.
Well, like another common example is like, let's say if you're driving late at night, or if you're pulling one of those long road trips. Like recently, I came back from a road trip where I drove 20 hours in a row. So at the end of this trip, I was a little dazed. Right?
just a little.
Like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but when you're driving down the road, you're watching those white lines pass you repeatedly, and your mind just kind of goes into this daze. And when you're in that daze, it's kind of hard to stay awake and part of you wants to fall asleep. But again, we can get into these kind of like periods where our mind begins to think about other things. We kind of think about broader perspectives in life. We start entertaining, bigger questions, things along these lines. Major thinkers in the realm of trying to understand consciousness and understand the type of thinking call this a diffuse thinking state. When we're not thinking about something detailed, right? We're not trying to figure out a detailed problem, but instead our scope widens a bit, and we begin to think about some of the broader questions in life, like, where am I going? What am I doing with life?
Yeah.
Who am I?
All stuff that brings up things, I think, for our clients that are like almost dissociative.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
So a dissociative state is an example of an altered state of consciousness.
Got it. I had no idea. I did it.
So for those of you who don't know what a dissociative state is, people for a wide variety of reasons can have this experience where it feels like their mind, their consciousness isn't in their body. It feels like maybe it's like slightly behind their body, almost like we're watching ourselves from a third person perspective.
It's like AI, man.
Yeah, like we're playing a video game or something like that.
Right.
Exactly right. It can also feel like you're watching a movie of what's going on instead of being in the movie and being the character, right?
So lack of presence almost in some regard. Sorry, I have to interrupt, but that's where my mind's going.
So lack of embodied presence. So your mind is still there. You can still see what's going on, but it doesn't feel like you're in the body.
That's a big difference. Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're in control. Like you can see your body make these decisions and make these movements, but we're not necessarily the ones, pulling the strings.
Got it. I
think this also happens a lot. I'm trying to relate it to what most people can relate to. This happens a lot when I don't know if you all remember this, when you're super young and you're trying to make, you're trying to kiss the girl for the first time, or make the move for the first time, or do anything that requires some measure of anxiety where you have to push yourself to go through. You might experience this state where your mind kind of pulls back a bit and you see yourself going through the motions, but it doesn't feel like it's you going through the motions. So that's one example of a dissociative state. Now, dissociative states can happen whether we're extremely depressed, anxious, when we're going through trauma. It's one of the brain's natural ways of coping with the hardship we're going through. The brain thinks that the body or the mind can't take what we're going through, so we kind of check out in that moment. And then we learn that that's a skill that we can do. And then for people who've gone through trauma, it tends to be a skill we kind of fall back into, and the body experiences it, when we don't need to experience it. And that's when it can become a problem for a lot of people. So a dissociative state is one example